Tony Weinbender is a prominent figure in the punk music scene, best known for founding and organizing Fest, a major punk rock festival held annually in Gainesville, Florida. Fest, which started in 2002, has become one of the largest punk attractions in the Southeast, drawing thousands of fans and artists to Gainesville. Tony has dedicated over 2 decades to curating the event, which spans multiple venues across the city and showcases a wide range of both established and emerging punk bands. Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Give me the opportunity to come in.
Absolutely. So I want to talk about the history of this and your involvement. It's truly a fascinating story, but why don't we start by, just kind of giving us an update on how Fest 2024 is going?
Okay, well, we number them, so it's our Fest 22, our 22nd year of doing it. It's come along great. We're using a lot of the same venues. We lost a venue this year with High Dive, but we pivoted real quick. Luckily, we have partnerships with lots of places in town and can establish new partnerships as well. But all the venues that we currently use, it's a bunch of different styles of venues, different things. They all kind of adapted. We ran a little bit longer hours at each venue and was able to change a little bit of the formatting at some venues. And we were able to take on all the bands that were confirmed to play at High Dive. And so we adjusted that and it worked out great. But that was many months ago. So
how many venues, or would you have?
Oh shoot,
do you even know?
I didn't count. But I think it's 12 we use. But we use large spaces through the city we use Bo Diddley Plaza, right. And then we build it out and expand into the streets to make it a bigger capacity, which was the best thing that ever happened to Fest, because it gave us not only able to host more people, but it gave an opportunity for the first time when we were able to do that, where headliners and bigger name acts, the attendees had an opportunity, all of them, to see them. It's a larger capacity at Bo Diddley Plaza than the capacity of the ticket sales we do. So there's no excuse why anybody couldn't see the headliner. Whereas before we were using what used to be the Florida Theater. At that time, I can't remember what incarnation it was over the years, but that was only 1,500 people, so it limited us. So that's a great thing. And then we use small spaces, we use Hal Bazaar or CMC, Vecinos, smaller cap rooms where attendees, they get to go to all these venues and choose their own adventure, but you can go see a band from Colorado that 150 people from all over the world there really goes a long way for them, just as important as a band playing at Bo Diddley Plaza to 4,000 people.
How many acts are you expecting this year?
I haven't done the final count, but we usually do around 350 bands or acts over the course of 3 days. And then we also host comedy. So we have a wide spectrum of comedians that come from the independent comedy scene. They come here and we do that at the Hippodrome on Saturday and Sunday. We built that into 2 comedy things. And then we also started several years ago our own professional wrestling company. And we do our big super show every year at Fest, which is perfect because we really realized many years ago there's a little crazy crossover in punks and people that like independent wrestling. So you get fans that are die hard about their wrestling, but they're also punk and sometimes don't feel comfortable at shows. And so this is the one show where it's, everybody feels at home to be a big dork about wrestling.
Is that a common pairing at punk events? Or?
No, we were kind of one of the only first ones to do that. And I don't think any other music festival or any other punk entity really that started their own federation, and started having belts and storylines and production and YouTube and stuff.
And how many attendees are you expecting this year?
So we sell 3,500 passes. We always cap it at that.
Okay.
And then we have about 550 volunteers that help out with the music festival. They work one shift during the event so we can cover our everything and make sure everything runs smooth. And they get a pass for all 3 days.
Oh, I see.
And then every band member plus one of their crew, or if they're a bigger band, they have more crew, they all get a pass for 3 days. And then we have our wonderful sponsors that get passes or do them for contests and whatnot. Overall, it's around 7,000 to 8,000 people, because we also do individual walk-up sales at select larger venues. And we usually make that 10% of the capacity of the venue. So an example of Bo Diddley Plaza, we'll sell 500 tickets for each day, single shows. So you can just go on a Saturday and go to see bands at Bo Diddley Plaza. And then a smaller venue like the Woolly, we only sell 30. Gotcha. So it just gives opportunity, because there might be somebody who can only come up for one day. There might be somebody who just really wants to see the bands that are on that show. Also might be somebody, most likely somebody in Gainesville, that's working all weekend and they only get that one night off and they still want to be a part of Fest.
I won't ask you to name all 350 bands,
Okay.
But can you give us some of the highlights?
So our headliners this year, we actually have 4 headliners. What we did with a lot of our larger bands is, since they're coming all this way to play and they have multiple albums that they've had over a long span of their career, we've asked them to play 2 sets. And so some of the bands are alternating. Like one night, Hot Water Music is going to headline our Thursday kickoff show. And they're celebrating their 30 years of being a band, their anniversary. Wow. And they started here in Gainesville. So it's a great homecoming for them to celebrate it here. And then on Friday night, we have Streetlight Manifesto, which is they've played Fest before, but it's been a really long time. And they're one of the bigger ska acts in town. Not in town, in the world, honestly. And then on Saturday night, we have the Bouncing Souls, who are from New Jersey. And they are a Fest alumni. They've been playing Fest. They're a band I grew up with. I remember putting on a show for them when I was 16 years old in Virginia. And then on Sunday, we have Matt and Kim, who's a duo, and they kind of do like electronic pop. They're probably, like, as far as mainstream goes, probably the biggest mainstream act we've ever had at Fest. But they played Fest, I think Fest 5 or Fest 6, on a pallet stage we made at a coffee shop one year. So it shows you how much the span has gone,
Yeah.
And that they're great to come back.
What are the dates this year?
The dates, we'll do our kickoff show on October 24th, and that's just Bo Diddley Plaza. That's not the entire festival. That's just a single ticketed show. And then the 25th, 26th, and 27th will be the actual days of Fest, where we'll be having everything going on all day, starting at our registration and our what we call the Fest Flea Market at Boxcar at Bo Diddley Plaza.
I love your dates because you took full advantage of one of the hottest football rivalries in the nation to tell us how you landed on these dates.
Well, the first year we did Fest, we actually did it over spring break. And coming from Virginia, I went to college there, and we, would always leave for spring break. And in my head, back in 2002 when we started it, I thought, like, what a great opportunity. College kids are kind of leaving, and then we can have people come down. And then we had a decent turnout for the first year. The only promotion we had was a 8.5 by 11 black and white flyer, and bands took it with them. Bands were coming through Gainesville and they helped us promote. But we quickly realized that, hey, Georgia Florida weekend might be a great time to do it, and it's been really helpful. It was a really dead time in Gainesville, so it was able for us to bring something and kind of bring life back. However, this year we're actually doing it not Georgia Florida weekend.
Oh.
It's a bye week that week, and it was because last year around this time, when we looked forward to another year, we always looked up the dates of Georgia, Florida, and then we announce it Fest weekend in our guidebook, and so everybody can make their plans. And then, I don't know, maybe a month or 2 later, they changed the football schedule.
Oh.
And so I got frantic calls from people in town, and we're like, hey, did you mean to do this, or are we going to be okay? And I contacted the hotels, and the hotels were like, it's a bye week, it's the same for us. So we kept the dates, and we're going to try to see how it is. But this will be the first year we're doing Fest where, it's all the people that are normally going to Gainesville and downtown an evening and Fest here. So it's going to be a busy weekend.
I know the hoteliers love Fest. Mm-hmm. Also, we did a little research through our Visit Gainesville Alachua County office, our tourism office, and I was really flabbergasted at the economic impact of Fest. The total, when you add up direct and indirect business, is almost $5 million in impact to our community. That's phenomenal, particularly as I did the history and I saw that the first Fest, you were $500 in a hole on your Visa. Is that right?
Not Visa, cash.
Cash, okay.
I had to kind of like go to our landlord that month and be like, hey, I can't make rent. And I didn't have a cool landlord back then. So.
Well, and it's a phenomenal event that you have coming up, but would you mind sharing a little bit about the history and the roots of Fest, because I've listened in on a lot of the interviews that you've done, and it's really an amazing story. So
thanks.
give us the Reader's Digest of how Fest came and how you migrated from Virginia.
So in Virginia in the mid-90s, I played in a small punk band called Swank. And we used to put on shows. We started putting on shows in my mom's basement when she had a daycare center. So the shows were in a daycare center in the basement. But we eventually found a venue. We started doing shows. And in that time period in the 90s, it was like there wasn't as many punk bands. And so we became friends with a lot of bands that came up from the South, mainly from Florida, a lot from Gainesville. So we would put on shows for them. And then they would, in return, put on shows for us here in Gainesville at what the Hardback was, which was, over by the Hippodrome where Boco Fiesta is now. And luckily with Alan and later Matt and Drew, we really came down here and used it where we would come down 3-4 times a year. And like those bands were Hot Water Music and Less Than Jake were the two big ones that helped us so much back then. After my band broke up, I went to college at James Madison University in Virginia. I was still putting on shows for those bands.
Right.
But through the university or through house shows. And then I was part of the college radio station, and we decided to put on our own music festival, which was more of a conference and we invited other college radio stations to come in. And so that's where I got my experience of doing like a multiple venue and also doing shows at unconventional music venues. And so after having that experience of doing that, I moved to Gainesville. I was still friends with Less Than Jake. I got offered a job opportunity to move here. I went to my advisors and said, hey, should I take this job opportunity to work for this startup record label that Less Than Jake's drummer was starting? And they said, yeah, that's a good opportunity for you.
Your advisors at college?
Yes,
Oh, no.
They advised me to drop out of college. They were like, with your experience and your degree, you will get out of here, you'll end up going to New York City, you'll be running coffee for people for a year. This is ground, hit the ground running, you're really deep into this, it's you and another person. So I worked that job. The record label was called Fuel by Ramen. It later blew up to a huge, huge record label that got bought out by a major and put out amazing bands like Fall Out Boy and Panic at the Disco. I quit that job.
And you were going out on the road with these?
I was going out on the road with Less Than Jake, and we were promoting the label and stuff. But after a year and a half of that, I got burned out real quick. I was putting in too many hours, and it was too hard. So I quit, and I started waiting tables.
So you were in Gainesville.
I was in Gainesville, and I was like, what am I doing? I dropped out of college, but I had a good friend support group. I was waiting tables, and my friends were like, hey, why don't you do something like that you did in Virginia here? And I was like, oh, I don't want to do a music conference. That's too much work. And they're like, no. You know so many bands. You're still doing shows for bands like almost every weekend for just, they're staying at your house. Let's put together a party. And that's kind of like how Fest started. We hit up all those bands that we knew. We invited them to come play. And then throughout the year, we asked bands to help us promote it outgoing. And, we had a great first year. It was really small. It was 2 days, I think 5 venues, something like, 50 bands.
This is 2022.
Yes.
The first Fest.
Yeah. And then it went so, not financially, we lost money, but, we bounced, the love and the feedback was so positive that we were like, let's do it again. And that's when we swung it around and did it in the fall. So really we just jumped right into doing the second one. And then, 22 years later, we've seen Fest grow as more people came. They went back home. They told their friends came. And then after Fest 3, we started seeing more international people come, and it's been a wonderful thing for, we run this on a very, very small budget. For the first 10 years, I was still waiting tables, being a publicist for another record label, and doing Fest at nights. So it's really become a full-time gig for me.
I heard your mom and dad were 2 of your early investors in Fest. Is that correct?
Correct. I, with my tail tucked, I went back home to Virginia, and separately asked each of them, for a small investment. And the funny thing was, my dad, who I thought would be the one who wouldn't give it to me, was the most you can do this. I have faith in you. And then my mom was so reluctant about it, who the one who let us put on all the punk shows and would help us find venues and let us use her Cadillac to get out of town. So it's great, and I'm so thankful for that. And also for all of our friends that really pulled together to help us run the first several years, and still to this day, many of the people that help and work just Fest weekend who don't do that all year round, they just work, all weekend for me, are still some of my best friends, and they do various different jobs throughout Gainesville throughout the year.
Do you think your experience both in a band and out on the road has helped with your whole mindset for Fest?
Yes, I think being in a band, not so much, but being in a punk band and independent and having to do it DIY and sleep on floors and play in basements and weird places, that ethics that come with being punk and treating people correctly, is not so much Mohawks, it's almost more hippie, in a lot of ways, the way we interact with each other. That's a great experience, and also being a fan of music and going to music festivals where you're out in a field and you're trapped in a field for 2 days, I don't enjoy that. And so I enjoy the choose your own adventure. I enjoy showcasing our beautiful downtown and showcasing all these different venues. So everybody and the surrounding businesses around them get an impact for Fest. And it's, we have a beautiful downtown, especially in the fall.
Right. And
so if you're coming from Germany or Chicago or Minneapolis where it's freezing, it's great to walk around and people really love it. We've even had bands write songs about it.
Have you gathered the data of where people come from for Fest?
So we kind of have our stats, but the Visit Gainesville stats that they've collected this year go well beyond what we do. We partner with I think 5 or 6 hotels. I lost track. And we do the direct sales for them and just turn over the rooming list and a big check. And that's worked out a lot better than offering a discount at hotels that might honor it, might not. Somebody might be confused. But it's great what Visit Gainesville's contributed for us this year, with the stats. It blew my mind.
Yeah. Anecdotally, though, people from all over the world are coming.
Correct. We do. We have those stats and we break it down. We also break down how many people come from outside of the city of Gainesville that come here as well. Yeah. And judging upon that, they're not cooking at home. They're going out to the restaurants, they're spending money, they're staying at places.
Tell me about the volunteer effort, because I know it's massive.
It is.
How many volunteers do you have?
So it's around 550. It varies every year between the length and how many venues we have. And we have lots of different opportunities, but we also use it as a learning opportunity for people. A lot of the people that volunteer for Fest have been to shows, but they've never put on a show. They've never played in a band. They've never been beyond the stage. They've never had interaction with some of their favorite bands. And so we open it up and we put full faith into the volunteers. They get their wristband, on Friday. If they work the last shift on Sunday night, they still get that wristband for Friday and use it. And we've had such a successful track record of people really not abusing that luxury.
Nice.
The luxury of going, but they're not taking their pass and then skipping out on their shifts. And a lot of people have learned a lot from that. We offer stage manager training so people can volunteer and learn how to stage manage, learn how to do tech stuff. But a lot of it is, just being that friendly, outgoing face at the venues, as people come in and doing stuff. Bo Diddley Plaza is such a huge thing, infrastructure we build out. We don't hire outside companies. We keep it all internally within our music scene. And you can only volunteer if you live in Gainesville or you volunteered in the past while living in Gainesville and you might have moved away.
So people on this career path should drop out of college and go to the University of
I wouldn't
Fest.
recommend that. I wouldn't at all. But I definitely think that it's not built for everybody.
Gotcha.
I just happened to just have that drive, just like I did when I decided I wanted to play in a band and drive to Gainesville and play shows. It was like, well, how do you do that? Nobody teaches you. You trial by error in a lot of ways.
So 10 years went by, and then suddenly you were able to do this full time?
I wasn't able to. I kind of had saved a lot of money from waiting tables. Okay. I was lucky enough to wait in some of the nicer indie restaurants in Gainesville, and worked really hard. And I also was living in houses with other people. My rent was cheap, my car was paid off, and it was just me. So I saved up $7,000, and I looked at at that time period what my life, what my expenses were for life. Right. And I said, what, I think I could live off of this for a year. And that was a challenge in case Fest failed. But I also thought if I could put all my effort, all my time into one thing, it can only benefit.
Right.
and that's what we did. I rolled the dice, and it's helped. I've done some other things, for supplemental income here and there. I'm also very lucky that I'm married to a wife that has a really good job, so it's helpful now. But yeah, this is my full time. I've got some other passion projects, but this is like the full time thing.
Does it surprise you when you look back to 2002 and now here you are in 2024? Were you envisioning it was going to be this successful?
No, we didn't envision doing Fest ever to like make money or to be successful. We were just like, let's do this. It's almost like a challenge in a way. Like I like to put those things forward in my own life to be like, I feel like I can do this. And not everything works out, but I think if you try to do, and it's kind of like not the right thing to say, but if you try to do something with the whole vision of to be successful at it and to make a bunch of money, in my opinion, you're in it for the wrong reasons. It's so much more beneficial to be pleasantly surprised with yourself and the outcome of things, I feel like, but always to have a backup, like I can always go work, I was always working doing this too.
You talked in other interviews I saw about PreInternet, how bands communicated, how people were able to put together festivals and things, and what is your experience of the 90s versus 2024?
Yeah, in the 90s we didn't have internet. There was a book, kind of a resource guide. There was two folds. There was a resource guide put out by this magazine out of San Francisco called Maximum Rock and Roll, and it was book your effing life. And I remember being in high school and us sitting at the lunch table, and one of us had a copy of it, and we were like, we're going to do this. And it would have like by state, by city, and there'd be a few people listed, and it would be like almost like a classified ad saying like, hey, we can do shows for these type of bands, we do them in these type of places, this is how we work. It's like this much of the door, or you can sleep on my house, but I have cats, and it was like stuff like I can make you spaghetti. And it was Gainesville, Biloxi, Mississippi, Atlanta, Georgia, Daytona, Tampa, all these places, and you just called and you talked to somebody on the other line who was just like you. We were doing the same thing in Virginia, and you would trade tapes, and it took so long, but it was also a lot less bands. But like Gainesville, any given night you could go to the Hardback and there would be like 5 touring bands and 1 local band every night, and they really took care of a lot of bands, probably more than they ever needed to. Right. And then, even when we started doing Fest, email existed, but we didn't have social media to help promote things, and promotion was hard. And then now, you jump to now, it's awesome, but it's also, I think it's also created people to be a little bit more needy with things. Like you have text, you have social media, people hitting up through social media, which I don't feel like is a very good way to do business communication. Email, phone, there's all these outlets, and so also there's a lot more bands, and we're a bigger music festival. So now, like when January hits and it's open season to apply to Fest, it's like an influx. But in the first couple of years of doing Fest, we actually had people mail in CDs and mail in tapes, and we had a printed application that you filled out and you mailed it in, and then we would set up at night, and open them up and listen to bands and be like, good, maybe, woof.
You click on the YouTube link, and
now it's all, yes, you go to YouTube, you go to Bandcamp, Bandcamp, and then you make spreadsheets and stuff. It's a lot different. It's still the same kind of process, but it's different.
Right. Hey, one of the things I noticed you did, Grace Marketplace is certainly near and dear to all of our hearts at the county, and I understand that you worked with them and did a fundraising event with them.
Correct. So every year at Fest, $1 for every ticket goes towards Grace.
Nice.
So we're able to give them at least $3,500, and then we also do a Fest auction with them. So all these artists donate signed memorabilia and whatnot. Record labels do too, and then they do an auction that's online, and that raises money for Grace. I don't remember exactly how much, but it's like $20,000, $30,000 just from that. And then they're active during the weekend, going around and selling, reminding people, go online, you can bid on these items and stuff. And then this year as well, because we only do this once a year, we don't have a license to sell alcohol, but we want to be able to give cheap sell cheap beer at $5 a beer for tall boys, big cans, at Bo Diddley Plaza. So we partner with a nonprofit, and this year we're partnering with Grace as well.
Okay.
So they're getting a percentage of those sales, past that, they get all that money too. So it's just a wonderful opportunity to help Grace even more this year.
We're down to just a couple minutes, but
Okay.
Can you share just quickly what COVID was like for Fest, what you were doing during that time period?
We didn't do it.
Yeah.
We didn't do it. We had the luxury of being a state that where we could have, but we internally didn't feel like it was safe. We talked to city officials and they agreed with us as well. And so we didn't do it. So it was a real hard year for us. We had already sold out Fest. And so we went to our attendees and said, look, you have an opportunity to get a refund, or you have an opportunity to let it roll over to next year, because we're planning on trying to do it next year if everything changes.
Right.
And I think pretty much like 80% of the attendees rolled it over.
Wow.
So that was a great thing. And then a lot of the bands were able to play again the second year, some didn't. Right. And then during that year, to keep the kind of momentum going, we did a thing called Fest at Home. And every Wednesday night, we produced a live TV show, and virtually through Zoom had just been created, right. We interviewed bands and then had bands perform. And so it gave people that were stuck at home still a community where they could come together, they could go on the chat, hang out together, and it really put, we did a Halloween special, we did a Christmas special, we did some fun stuff. It's still on the Fest YouTube channel.
Okay.
But it was a hard year, but I'm glad we were able to come out of it, and we learned a lot, and we still take a lot of those practices about how to run a music festival during a pandemic, and we still use those now. And everybody's a little healthier after Fest.
In our last minute, what are you doing right now to get ready for Fest this year?
Just a lot of meetings with the venues, a lot of meetings with city, a lot of the things. Now we're not into promotion, we're not really into booking, it's all production right now. And so getting them all up, long list of stuff, and you just every day cross off and do things as many. And I'm glad we were able to work this in as well into our busy time.
Well, I'll tell you, Fest is really one of the things that puts downtown Gainesville on the map, and you've been an incredible benefit to this area.
Thanks. I think we all have. It's a whole big, it's a little family that does it here of 550 people that are just have the open heart to care about music or care about Fest. I mean, there's some people that volunteer that are retired, and I'm just like, are you going to Fest? And I think they just really want to be a part of it, and that's the thing.
Well, hey, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.
Yep.